Welcome everyone to episode number 3. I can't believe it's been 3 months in the year already of the Tech Town Hall series at PTZOptics. Again, my name is William Golde, the director of channel sales here at PTZOptics and HuddleCam HD. Now this week we have yet again our brain trust, Matt Davis and Stephen Heywood joining us to talk about mobile streaming rigs. Now we touched on it in our last episode very briefly when we were talking about NDI, about how you can develop a mobile streaming rig. Now, this applies to a multitude of different instances, but mostly streaming as a service. If you yourself are finding that people are requesting streaming as a service rigs, or you yourself are looking to become a streaming as a service provider, a mobile rig is almost essential. So today we're going to tap Stephen. He's going to explain to us about his mobile rig, the things he's used in the past, what's coming up in the future, and then we're going to deep dive into the pieces of hardware and the workflows that make that happen. So Stephen and Matt Davis, go ahead, take it away, all things remote streaming rig.
Hey, William, thanks. It's great to be here. And as always, Matt, it's great to be here and talk about some remote setups with NDI. Gotta love it, man.
Yeah, fun topics everywhere. This is another great one to explore, and hopefully we don't go too far into the weeds, but yeah, hopefully we got some good education for everyone here.
Well, this was something that I had been working on when I first started working here, and I was kind of showing you the progress as I was going, just taking it. And I want to stress this to everybody. This is bits and pieces of kit that I had in the studio that I wasn't using anymore, and I was using it for other things. And I do want to preface this tour that we're going to show you here in a few seconds was just shot on an iPhone. So just relax. But we do want to show you this, and we think you'll enjoy it. So take a look at this. All right, so here is the rack. And as you can see, we have the monitor here with the vmix interface. We're running central control, so we can control the X keys with it, which I'll show you in a bit. I've got a router back here. I have a PoE switch there. And I have a headphone amplifier here, so I can have up to 4 people listening to the audio at any given time. The monitor is cables large enough that I could slide this rack underneath a table and work off of it. Same way with the keyboard and mouse. Down here you'll see I have the LiveView Solo. These are all Velcroed in, so they're not going to fall. One modem, the other modem's back there. You can kind of see. This drawer will also pull out if I need easy access. I have an audio interface, which is a PreSonus audio box, which is USB into the vmix machine. And then I have this on it because one of them is an instrument input, one's a microphone. So to get stereo sound, I just did it that way. So I can plug in from a mixer that is at a location via 1/4 inch XLR or USB, if the case may be, if they have a USB mixer. And then I don't need to use the audio interface. That's just if I need to use it for microphones or whatnot. I have this eliminator power switch bay to turn everything on. And then I've got an 8-core, what used to be the live to air box. And now that is running vmix. And you can see I'm running it pretty lean, 33%, 4 inputs. All the cameras are over NDI. You can see I've got a 100-foot cable for each camera. As you can see, all 4 over NDI. Like I said, I was using the X keys. So with central control, I know you guys you're not gonna be able to see it, but I can sit there and switch using this. I have it all set up with central control. And then I also have the SuperJoy on group 2. My studio is group 1, and I have it set up with the YOLO box as the monitor. It's a portable monitor. So essentially I can press camera 1, camera 2, camera 3, camera 4 out on location and be able to adjust the cameras as I see fit with it. Now, right now, these 2 devices, they don't have the cables running through because those are something I can set up there, and then also they're long enough that I can run them on a table, and this rack can go underneath the table. I also have this stand here that runs a 32-inch TV that I can use as a multi-view, as you're seeing there, or we can do a giant program out. It really is up to whatever the call is. And then I've got 4 tripods for these cameras.
I have two 30x and two 20x cameras. So that is my mobile rig in a nutshell.
So, Stephen, there's two things about your setup that I think are worth noting to anybody who's watching this. The first is your mobile setup's using NDI. You look at a lot of these traditional rigs that were all SDI based. SDI cabling gets really heavy, really, really quick. Like most people don't realize it. A 100-foot run of SDI cabling, that's going to be a workout. You move to network cabling, this mobile rig starts to own its name a lot better being mobile. So the move to NDI, I think, just adds a lot of flexibility here that is definitely worth considering when building a mobile solution. The second thing, you touched on being able to accommodate on-site equipment like a USB mixing board that may exist on-site. The ability to adapt and be able to take in content, other sources that are existing on a site, something very well worth considering when you're designing one of these.
I tried to think of just about everything that I could within my mind, which is why I had the router in there. So I wanted to explain that a little bit, where the router gives me the ability, because everybody has a smartphone or a tablet, it has the ability to take like an NDI camera from your smartphone and Matt, bring that into your production. But I don't really use it all the time. I use the switch, and I know in a future episode we're going to kind of get into that stuff, get more into the networking side of it. But the other thing is, it's a 20-minute setup. Like I can take it in, I plug it in, and we're ready to go. Now, one of the things I did make a change from that video is because one of the first events that I did, the sound guy blew out my audio interface. So that's something you guys you want to make sure that you watch. But they blew this out, and so what I have here is I have added a audio interface. It's a PreSonus. It's basically an 8 or 9 channel here. I have added that to my setup, and so that's given me better audio, straightforward into it, which is really cool. I'm still doing analog though, so I mean it works, right?
Oh yeah. It definitely helps keep things so that you can adapt to most of what you're going to find in the audio world. And a lot of what you see modern wise that's digital is likely to be all IP based, at which point, as long as it's on your network, you're going to be able to access it.
Yeah, so one of the other things that I've also done, and I know people probably want to see the back side of it, and I'm going to try to do this. I'll go to full screen so you guys can kind of see that here. We'll zoom her in here. One of the things, Matt, that I paid attention to on the back side of this is the wiring. I bought all new wiring. I think that was the most expensive thing that I paid for this, which was about $100 because, like I said, everything else was stuff I had laying around here, and obviously the camera's courtesy of PTZOptics. But the cabling, I made sure I got right angle cables or attachments that I could go right angle with, so that way, Matt, I could just close it. I didn't have to unplug anything, right?
Yeah, and you're hitting on a really important point when you're designing any system, which is the least amount of strain you can put on cables, the better for the longevity of your system, and it leads to a happier you because you're not troubleshooting your production equipment. So don't go trying to force cables places they don't belong. Like Stephen's pointing out, they do make right angle, 90-degree, all sorts of adapters and cable varieties. So don't just shove it in there. Find the right cable for the job.
Exactly. So what we want to do here, this is the overall view of this. What we're going to do is Mike's going to show here in a few seconds. He's going to show this in action at the, I believe it was one of the Hubbard graduation, or was it the Hubbard play? Let me think about here. I think it was the graduation. We're going to show you how we incorporated that into the actual sound system. We actually, Matt had a sound guy on location where he was sitting there and he was doing all the sound, and he just plugged into that. He thought it was the greatest thing because he didn't have to worry about it. So Mike, let's run that clip. All right, so this is the setup here for Hubbard High School graduation. You can see we've got vmix running right there. We've got the X keys. We're just monitoring it on the MacBook. It's not really necessary. We have a keyboard. We've got the YOLO box just doubling as a monitor. We've got the PTZOptics SuperJoy.
outputting multi-view to this TV screen. We also have this power adapter here that I have set up. Down here, I made some modifications. I got away from using the router. I was talking with the IT director, and he was like, I wouldn't use that, just go switch. So that's what we did. So I've got the audio interface here, PreSonus, and then I've got right underneath it, and I know it's hard to see, and but we have the live view solos in there, but we're not really using that right now. The power bay, and then we've got a 8-core PC, like I said, which is running streaming 1080, outputting and recording. And then you can see we've got a camera up in the balcony up there, PTZOptics 20X, and we've got another one way up there. Let's see if I can zoom in on it. You can kind of see it way up there, right there, underneath that light. And then we've got one right there, and then we've got one right over here. So we've it 4-camera setup, and they're mixing the audio for us here and sending it over, and that's the setup.
So there's a great example, Matt, of it being used, right? Having that ability. And then we also have, I'm going to kind of show this real quick. This is the setup that we used when we did the play. I mean, it's the same setup, but my little dump camera that you can see on the slider up there on my makeshift on the makeshift stool there. And that was basically the dump camera. But because of COVID was going on, nobody was allowed to be there. So we had the camera set up at prime locations. I had 2 on the stairs, or 2 on the stage, 2 in the audience. And then, again, this is the same setup that you guys saw there before. So, I mean, I bring my own table, too, because I'll tell you, that's one of the hardest things to try to get on location with this stuff.
Yeah, knowing you're going to have appropriate space for all the equipment and be able to actually produce content, that is definitely something I think people could easily look over as having an appropriate table.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, from the actual footage, if you guys want to see some footage now, I do have the audio muted, and the main reason is because obviously copyright. The school doesn't have the license for that we can just give out. But you can kind of see, I mean, I was dealing with a lot of sharp brash lighting, but having that ability, we were switching this kind of like, we had the impression, Matt, that this was like a Nickelodeon show. I guess that was the best way I could explain it. The way the play was, like, there was a lot of cuts and switches and different areas, like, because of the dialogue. So, but all in all, I mean, it worked out. It worked out really good, and people complimented on this. And so, I mean, there's a lot of good stuff within this rig.
Again, what's so cool is the fact that you've got a production rig that you were able to take out to another. It's not in a studio,
right?
You've got a whole system that you can go out and go pretty much anywhere and create content. That is awesome.
The main thing is people have to remember is you have to think everything through. Draw it out, diagram it out. There's a lot of moving pieces here. But the nice thing, again, I can't reiterate this enough, is I wanted to go in and just plug in and go. I didn't want to have to think about, okay, where am I going to run this wire? Where am I going to run that wire? And the flexibility of the SuperJoy, I don't need to own 2 of them. Having the groups, if you're on the fence about it, and this isn't a sales pitch, if you have one of the older joysticks, it's time to upgrade, because having this in your studio and then being able to set up another group and then go out on location with the same joystick that you've been using, oh man, talk about money that you're saving, especially if you're doing in studio and out of studio productions. I mean, you can't beat that, Matt.
No. I mean, that's part of what we tried to design the the SuperJoy to accommodate, was that it's not just meant to live at one desk forever. We know there's a lot of mobile warriors out there that go out and conquer a lot of content for themselves and other people. So we like the idea that if they've made the investment in one product, it should hopefully serve a lot of these other needs. And you're really just showcasing how easily it can accommodate other setups.
So this is something that, we kind of wanted to put together and show you guys and get a little bit deep. But having the NDI, my buddy actually, I showed you guys that I had 100-foot cables. I actually have 400-foot cables that I showed. But what I didn't show you is since that video, I have 300-foot Ethernet cables that a buddy of mine made for me because I was doing the video production for him at the school that I guess his mother-in-law is the director of the play or whatever. So as a thank you, he made me some 300-foot cables. So Matt, I couldn't be happier than a pig in mud, man, on that one.
No, I mean, you're really set. The other nice thing about a setup like that is you can move the cameras to get that right shot. So you're talking about going on site and adverse lighting conditions. You know, part of the nice thing about a setup like that is you can actually put the camera where there is the least amount of interference coming from those lights.
And so something else that I want to try, I have a set of wireless cables here. That is something that I'm going to try with that rig at some point to, try to go that distance. I think it's 1,300 feet, or if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah. I mean, to me, it is a mobile setup definitely gets intriguing because really now you're just looking for power, at the camera location, and hey, it's wirelessly talking back to the main unit.
That's just it. So, if you have any questions about this rig, you can leave it in the comments below, and we'll do our best to answer those questions. But let's send it back to Will in the studio.
Just to toss it over to a couple of questions. And I want to, again, we're going to deep dive here in a minute. But just from a high level view, when we're talking about a remote setup, Stephen, can you just run through maybe the 4 or 5 pieces of hardware that you need to just go ahead and get a remote setup going?
Yeah, I think the big thing to have is obviously your cameras, an audio solution, whether it's an audio interface. I mean, the audio interfaces seem to be the easiest to get audio in. Good computer, and obviously you have to have some way to stream out. I used a live view, but there's a lot of solutions out there. And then a way to travel with it so it doesn't get broken, right? I have everything in a case to prevent it from getting damaged. It's in that flight case. All my TVs are in cases. They have special TV cases. So those are the top things. I mean, obviously you need your cabling, but those are the top things that I would suggest.
Your mobile hotspot will likely not be enough for this because you have that live view unit, which actually works on cell band in order to live stream out. Also, you could typically use whatever the internet access point is at that facility, if they have one, just assuming that their internet is good enough. But yeah, we get that a lot. Hey, can I just use my phone to live stream? Like a 4-camera NDI setup? Short answer, no. Go with a live view unit. There are solutions out there for mobile streaming. Research them. There's a bunch of options, like you said. Now diving into use cases. Now we saw their graduation. We saw a play setup. What are some of the use cases that you've also seen these mobile units in? I guess what I'm thinking of, streaming as a service. In the world we live in these days, content is king, right? And remote access to things is essential in a lot of certain ways. So what are some of the best use cases you can think of when we're talking about remote rigs?
We've seen one type of a mobile rig at this point. There is also a different type of what I call a mobile rig, which is often referred to as like a production studio in a box. So this is where, in theory, you might have an entire system in a box that you ship to somebody else when you want to do a production with them and they don't have the equipment. So, don't think that it's just all about having this one master control system like you'd have in a studio. Sometimes it's getting all that intelligence, the cameras, the mics, the lighting out to the edge, and then allowing somebody else to produce that content from another location. So mobile rigs really can serve a bunch of different use cases beyond just doing a production at a different site.
I like that.
Now, Stephen, in your video, you did mention that you went from a router to a switch. Talk a little bit about the IP infrastructure for your mobile rig, what that difference really is, what the implications there are in, and then what you would typically recommend, like what router or switch are you working with and why do you use it? Let's talk about that.
I wish I had like some big elaborate definition as to why I went with the switch. I went with the switch because it was the cheapest one I found. It was the cheapest PoE plus switch that I found. So that's why I went with it. And the router was just a cheap, I think it was even a Linksys or Cisco now, right, Matt? Is that what it is now?
Mm-hmm.
I just went with a cheap one that I knew was going to work with what I wanted to do. And so essentially, being its PoE plus power over Ethernet, having that ability to power those cameras, and so I'm just running one cable. I'm not worried about, as Matt alluded to earlier, trying to find some kind of power source for these cameras. As you saw when we did graduation, they were in some pretty hard to reach areas. So it was great to have that ability to just plug in an Ethernet cable and go. Now the router, when you start working in a location like I was for the graduation, if you have that hooked up, and Matt, you can kind of correct me if I'm wrong on this, you can run into some problems if they're running a router with a MAC address setup, where you could run into where your router's trying to take IP addresses from the other router, and then you have no internet, you have no nothing. It's just going to break everything you're doing. I believe they call it a DHCP collision, if I'm right.
Yeah, there's a number of things that can go on, but I think almost what you're alluding to and what would be really important to impress upon people is two things when you're going out to a site and you plan to use their internet. First, you need to talk to whoever the IT manager is, and if people don't know the details, you need to kind of walk through it with them to understand what they have access to. As a lot of the times clients will tell you, like, yeah, we've got plenty of bandwidth, no problem. You get on site, they're just not used to live streaming. They don't know what the requirements are. So a lot of the times that's going to require some hand holding. Don't trust just because they say they've got bandwidth, just because they say they have wireless, that it's going to do what you need. The other thing is always having a plan B, and if you can, a plan C. So if you're planning to use the location's internet connection, it's good to have something like a live view on hand as backup to that in the event that it does not meet your requirements.
Exactly. So those are the things, which is what I did when I got there. And the IT director even said to me, he said, for this one, he said, I wouldn't use any of your mobile devices. He has everything set up as MAC addresses. So I had to set all the cameras to their specifications in order to get on their internet and go out for when we did graduation. But William, you alluded to other use cases. I showed a play, I showed a graduation, football games, sports, anything like that. In fact, we did a live stream, which I don't have a recording of. We did, they had I forget what they called it. It's a band invitational. I think that's what it was called, where they have like the middle school and the high school, they do band out on the football field. There's like a band shelter, and what they were doing is performing for the parents and stuff, and we live streamed that down on the football. So there's different opportunities at our local school. They're streaming the bowling matches that are going on. There's an actual high school or middle school and high school bowling team. So there's a lot of options and opportunities that you can do some remote production. That you need a box, you just go in and you just do it.
Now we're focusing on live streaming as a service or use cases thereof, but also there's a lot of recorded and I guess on-demand content creation potential here as well. So speak pretty briefly, if you could, what's a good solution for recording this content? Because obviously if you live stream and you push it out, it goes out. But there's opportunity for on-demand creation or even post-production a little bit in the recorded side of things. Do you have a recording unit in your mobile rig as well?
So I record everything, inside of vmix. I'm recording that. I have in the past, if I know I'm going to be in a location where it's kind of sketcy, and what I mean by sketchy, where I'm not really getting, like in a park, we've done for a church service, they did a worship night in a park. I might take I have an older Adamus Ninja. They probably have newer ones now. This is from like 7 or 8 years ago, but it has basically a hard drive that you stick into it. You can touch it and set everything up. It's touchscreen. It'll show whatever the program out, and you can record directly in ProRes to that hard drive. You can also record in the cloud based on your CDN if your CDN allows it. So yeah, I mean, mainly I record right to vmix to an external hard drive, which obviously you guys didn't see it. Not all the time. It really depends on the environment and how critical that recording needs to be. Matt, you have any suggestions on that as well?
I think the only thing I'd throw in there is that even if you're doing a live stream, it's worth recording at the same time as long as your PC can handle it, as you never know when things might go awry. Sometimes the public internet is outside of your control, hence it's the public internet. And if you have that recorded content, you're going to wind up with a lot less upset individuals over missing pieces of the children's play that's going on or the sporting event, as long as you can recapture that saved content that you have hopefully recorded.
And William, let me add to that, since that was a wonderful question. One of the things that we did say to the audience, okay, when we were doing these live streams, one of the biggest issues at graduation, at these plays, we went in there and we put out on the Facebook page of the school, and we said, listen, go enjoy your child's graduation, your student, I guess, a young adult now, graduation. Don't get your phones out and put them up, and because they might end up in our camera's view. We said, enjoy the graduation. Sit there, listen to it, because we're doing a professional, high-end recording that you'll have 100% access to, Matt. Like, you're going to be able to get that. Enjoy the moment that you're in. Let that to us who really don't have any connection with your kids.
Yep. Yeah, you're just trying to capture the content and make everybody look good.
So that was something that we've said, especially with plays. So you don't get Grandma Ethel standing up in front of your camera and running into problems. William, I know your Graham used to do that too, right?
Oh yeah, notorious for it. Alice Goldie. Ugh. But no, I think about this like when I go to concerts, right? You see like a sea of phones. Like if it could be offered again, like on demand after the fact, and you could go relive that experience from a professional environment, right? Like your phone is not going to be as good as a professionally produced live stream and live recording, and you can always go back and use that content. Obviously, there's reasons why that doesn't happen for monetary purposes, but I digress. That's an excellent point. So, in these different environments, if people are curious about starting to do live streaming, that there's a multitude of different benefits, and we could go down the list for the rest of the day, but we're probably going to leave it at that. I do want to jump back real quick. You had talked about audio, and it sounds like also, I think I know the answer to this question before I ask it. From the IP side, go look at Netgear, go look at Ubiquiti, like just get yourself a solid PoE, power over Ethernet switch, and you're good to go on that front. But to audio solutions as well, there are a million different solutions out there. What are some of your favorites in terms of audio interfaces? And just speak to that workflow pretty briefly. How are you bringing audio in? I know you showed it on the video, but just kind of dive a little bit deeper on the audio side as well.
So one of the things that I wanted to be able to do is receive, I'll go to this so people can have a visual here. Like we talked about, being able to go to XLR. Like if you look at this, you'll see here. Let me go back to this picture here. You can see you could do XLR or you can do 1/4 inch, and it's just as simple as plugging it in the front. Not everybody has the ability to do IP audio. I mean, Matt, that's ideally where I want to get to, be able to just go in. But I have wireless microphones that I'm hooking up sometimes where they didn't think about miking the instruments to a live play. So I have to take wireless microphones down there, and I plug the packs into that. I always carry them with me, like the handheld condensers, because you just don't know. And then let's say they're not bringing it through the house because nobody's there, and they might have 4 or 5 characters that are speaking. We'll plug all their packs into the XLR to where we can control the audio going to the stream. I had a guy, you saw it in the video, where he had headphones on, and he was my sound engineer. Him and I were doing it. So having an audio interface, I know this is a PreSonus. I've always used PreSonus, so I like their gear, but I know you're using a Scarlett 2i2, right?
Yes, yeah, I've played with both the PreSonus and the Focusrite equipment. They both make excellent products at great prices for all the features that they offer. But there's plenty of other options out there for people to explore, from big boy mixers down to modern digital solutions like those from QSC and many more.
One of the things I will stress, though, William, with that question is know who's giving you the feed of audio. And the reason I said that, if you remember earlier in the presentation, I mentioned that they blew out my original audio interface because the one guy that didn't know what he was doing took a feed from the port, or I was going to say from the porch, but from the stage, which was powered, and he's running it into the audio interface, and it couldn't handle it, and it blew it out. And then we had no audio interface for that, so I had an audio. We ran it right into the sound card. Bad move, blew my sound card. And then I had to come back the next day because I felt bad. I wasn't going to leave him hanging, and we had to reset everything up, redo it. So make sure you know where your audio line's coming from, and if at all possible, take an unamplified signal. It wasn't that it was just like phantom power. This was an amplified signal coming out of there. So you don't want to do that. So know where your audio is coming from. That was a mistake that I made. I just trusted this guy knew what he was doing since he does audio, and it cost me $100.
Yeah, this further goes into the whole point of don't necessarily trust that everything on site is going to, mobile is different. You need to be prepared with backups. You're not at home. You're not at your studio. You don't have access to all your regular equipment. You're going to be interfacing with other people's devices. Get ready to interface with a variety of different devices. It takes a lot more work to do a mobile production because you've got to do a lot more planning on your side.
And William, to that note, I have a bag that is about yay by yay that is only cables. I probably have about 3 to 5 of the same cable that I have in that rig that's in that box that I take with me because, as Matt just pointed out, you just don't know. Even the Ethernet cables. Somebody could have winding it up, got it snagged on something, yanked it, and now you gotta rip in it. So I'm overkill in some cases with that, but I have a bag that just has cables in it.
I mean, just thinking about it in terms, Matt, you made a perfect point of saying, hey, you're not at home, you're in a new environment, you're going to have to interface with a multitude of different, potential pieces of technology and workflows and all these other kinds of things. And then also have backups on backups on backups. And if you're Stephen, backups on those backups. And that's going to be the key to success. And that's actually, it reminds me of like the core concept of PTZOptics here is like why we interface with everything. We have no proprietary technologies or workflows or protocols. Make sure when you're looking at your devices, make sure that they can interact with a multitude of different things out there when you're mobile. But thinking of mobile rigs from, like, again, a use case scenario, if you have a small corporate office, like creating content is key. You have different events, things going on. You have different meetings. You have different, potential environments to record content. Get a simple mobile rig, and just have the ability to get that stuff recorded. And then you can build that content and distribute it in various different ways, whether for marketing or for sales activities. Public school systems, that's a no-brainer. We talked about all the applications. Sports is huge, right? Recording of high school sports. Building game tapes for kids who are trying to, go to that next level. That's huge. House of Worship is a perfect example. People are in different environments nowadays, so get a mobile rig. And it's not terribly expensive. Stephen, if you had to put, your mobile rig obviously is, higher end. If you had to put a dollar figure, say, on building a mobile rig, what is a low and a high ball price point that we're talking about when we're talking about these mobile rig setups?
If you really put the cameras into it and all the other gear that's into it, there could be $10,000 worth of gear there, and it's not top of the line gear like the computer. Like I said, it was my old live to air box, but it's still, it was there. I was trying to grab from whatever I had laying around, or beg, borrow, and steal could get. But I think what I would do if you're watching this, and this is only because I have one of these, and you guys heard me mention this. I'm not endorsing this, but this is a good starting point. Okay, YOLO Box makes a $1,300 Android-based mobile setup. And I believe, and don't get me wrong, because I don't know what all the specs are with it. I have one of the original one. There's a YOLO box and a YOLO box Pro, and I think the Pro is a little bit more money. But you can hook up HDMI cameras to it. I believe they're working in NDI, some inputs, but you have the ability to stream out. It's touch screen capable, so if you're using a DSLR or any kind of other camera, hot shoe mount, you can mount it up on there. Matt has the ability to stream right from it. It has the ability to record right to an SD card for $1,300.
Yeah, I mean, the only other thing I might throw out there that it goes right in line, it would require a monitor, but you know, the Blackmagic Mini Pros.
Oh, there you go.
They are a very easy to use. They've got a nice bevy of options for control purposes. You know, transitions, and they do have a variety of sizes based on inputs and capabilities. So, you know, depending on what your actual production is, you might not need their top of the line one. And I will say even their top of the line one, for what it offers, is a very affordable product.
This one, right?
Yep. Yeah, exactly.
So there you go. So
Perfect.
I think, Will, I said that's what I would do. I mean, mine's a little bit overkill because, again, I had the stuff and I'm like, well, I'm in this deep now. I'm going to keep going. But for the average person, I think getting us, you know, something like this or the Blackmagic, the YOLO box Blackmagic, there's other devices out there. It's just ones that we've used. So I would suggest starting there. You don't have to go crazy.
No, I really think it's so cool to see these technologies develop in this way where, again, you know, with the advent of YouTube and Facebook Live, it just gave everyone an access to a channel. All of a sudden, they could become content creators. And now all the pieces of hardware that are following in order to give people access to those platforms are getting better and better and better and more cost effective. And we could go on again for days about all the different ways that you could, you know, create one of these mobile rigs. And pretty much on that point, I'm going to go ahead and end it. And I'll say this again, thank you so much for joining our Tech Town Hall here, hosted by myself, again, William Golde, working with PTZOptics and HuddleCam, joined by Matt Davis and Stephen Heywood remotely. Gentlemen, thank you so much. But as always, please stay in touch with the brands. You can reach out to us partners at PTZOptics.com. Goes to my team directly. Answer any questions that you may have. Also, you can reach out to anybody at our company if you have any technical questions. We'll definitely get you in the right place. And stay involved in the community. We're always talking about the things that are developing, always talking about newer and better technologies as they come up, like NDI5, and Mr. Davis will be hosting that on March 16th. So again, we thank you for joining us. See us in the comments. Stay involved. Stay engaged. Like, subscribe, hit that button. And we'll talk to you soon. Thank you so much.